Hi, fellas and ladies. We're back here for more story time. Maybe you're wondering what I'm doing holding this axe. I was actually gifted this axe, kind of commensurate with my Viking ways. I was bestowed this particular implement. So I'm just going to keep it handy just in case someone gets out of line here in this ancillary Wildwood lair that I might have to, be called to engage in fierce battle. But I like to say I'm armed, but not dangerous. You know what I'm saying? What? Well, we're going to talk a little bit more today about some touring, traveling experiences. And Elijah here asked me about my Asian sojourns. And I haven't been to Asia as much as certainly I've been to Europe. One of my favorite cross-Asia experiences was actually quite a few years ago. I went with an individual by the name of Ken Oda. Ken Oda used to work for Fender Japan, Fender Asia. And I did a whirlwind tour of Asia with Ken Oda as my, shall we say, traveling partner. And I did various clinics playing with tracks, going in, and I had a bunch of my tunes from actually my record that had come out by that point called The Grip, which was out on Favored Nations, which was Steve Vai's label. And it was mostly of an incendiary instrumental variety. So I would come in and I had my guy who engineered my records to take the main guitar part out. So I do a little of what I like to call guitarioke for the people, laughing and a joking and a singing a song. And we went over there. First stop, I flew into to Tokyo, to Narita, but I really didn't do anything in Japan on that particular trip. We went right from there to Taiwan and proceeded to engage in activities in Taipei, which was a glorious, glorious trip. It was very warm. It was early September, as I recall. It was early September, ladies and gentlemen. But went there and had a glorious time. Went and saw this particular museum in Taipei that has a lot of the artifacts from the dynasties of China. And that's one of the reasons why China is so anxious to reunite with Taiwan, is because hey, we want our stuff back. But hey, I'm not judging, I'm not hating. I'm just saying they have a glorious museum there full with artifacts of various Chinese dynasties. So we went to that, and I remember we had this chicken soup. You don't really think of chicken soup. Elijah, you don't really think of chicken soup as being like, hey, when I think of Chinese food, I think of chicken soup. But man, let me tell you what. They throw down a soup up there in the hills above Taipei. They bring this little thing, this little cauldron to your table. They start adding stuff to it. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm so excited. I'm spitting on the camera. And we had this opulent and savage feast. It just makes me want to grab this axe and just start slaying some chickens and making some soup. I'm not really a killer, but I'm obviously armed. But I had some delicious soup there. But one of my favorite things about that particular trip, we had some great crowds and it was magnificent and so on and so forth. A couple of different stories stand out in my mind. Poor Ken Oda was not used to my particular vernacular of the English language. Well, actually few are, but just little things like I would always say, indeed. And he would say, Greg, what is this indeed? Now, mind you, I don't want to use this Asian accent as a way to offend. As Louis C.K. says, stereotypes are harmful, but the voices are funny, right? So let's just not go off the deep end here, ladies and gentlemen, with being offended by my Ken Oda accent. He said, what is this indeed? And I said, well, Ken, it's kind of just a fancy way of saying yes. He's like, do other people use this? I go, well, the cool cats do. He goes, indeed. Like, right on. And then it'd be time for mealtime. Like, for instance, when we had the chicken soup up there in the hills above Taipei. And I go, boy, Ken, this is a savory repast. Greg, what is this savory repast? And I'd say, well, it's kind of just a fancy way of saying a delicious meal. He'd go, ooh. And then after we get done with a clinic or a show, and he'd go in and he'd say, Greg, the promoter was very much satisfied. And I'd go, Ken, that is a bold statement. He goes, what is this bold statement? I go, oh, it just is a thing I like to say of saying, it's a wise statement or whatever you want to say. The wise thing he said something wise or an interesting statement. So this happens, and months later, we're at the NAMM show, and back then Fender would always stay at a hotel that was off-site. It wasn't near the Anaheim Convention Center. It would always be, you'd have to get a ride to and fro. So oftentimes in front of the hotel, there would be a large group of people gathered around, like, oh, hey, where are you going? You going out to eat? You going to the thing? What are you, what's happening? So we're out in front of the hotel, and it's me and maybe 10 other guys shooting the breeze. And here comes Ken Oda. I hadn't seen him since our trip to Asia, and he's traveling with his little suitcase behind him, and he walks up and he looks at us and he says, "Did you boys just come from a savory repast?" And all of these guys break up because they know that that's, what am I saying? So they all start laughing, and of course with Ken saying it, they thought it was hysterical. So he takes a few more steps and looks at everybody and goes, "Indeed." Further laughter. Then he takes a few more steps, stops again as everyone's howling, and turns around and goes, "Now that was a bold statement." And of course it was a bold statement. So I remember that about that trip, of that Asian sojourn, of me destroying poor Ken Oda's sense of the English vernacular with those statements. But another interesting story of that particular time, it involved Ken Oda, is we got to Jakarta. And actually there's a couple of funny stories from this trip. We get to Jakarta, and I'd never been to Jakarta before. And I said, "Well, how long are we going to be in Jakarta?" And he said, "We're going to be there for less than 24 hours, and you'll understand when we get there." Now, this is no offense to people in Jakarta. If you're watching this, hey, don't be offended. We land there, and as we're getting into town, the traffic was chaotic, and there's all kinds of corrugated shacks and things of this nature, and I thought, boy, that's depressing. I'm sorry to see that people are living in these conditions. And then you'd see a river, and it's got all kinds of floating debris in it and whatnot. And again, I don't have a seatbelt on, and I think this is like a week and a half into my trip, and I'm, you're homesick. You're kind of like, what am I doing? Where am I going? I'm like, oh, and then you stop at a particular stop sign or whatever, and there's just like people everywhere and like chaos and bedlam, and I'm just this Milwaukee boy's not feeling it. You know what I'm saying? So we finally get to the hotel, and I said, "Where's the gig at?" "Well, the gig, the meal, and everything is where you're staying." I was like, "That's fantastic," because I just can't deal with it. It's like sensory overload. I can't take it. I just want to go to my hotel and hang out. And they're like, "Well, the distributor wants to know if you want to go across town and see their operation and have a nice lunch over there." I was like, "Let me be clear. I'm not leaving my hotel." I was pulling the brown M&Ms. You know what I'm saying? I was like, "Sorry guys, I'm very, very tired. I need to call home. I need to take care of some personal business and to take a nap." And they're like, "Sure, no problem." So I also remember that particular occasion of my wife calling me going, "You really need to call into school because, one of the kids has an issue with one of their teachers." And I remember calling into the school from Jakarta and they were just about to put me on hold. It's like, I just want to point out that I'm calling from Jakarta. So if we could make this, don't put me on hold for too long, because this is costing a little bit of money. Again, a brown M&M moment. Good problems to have, you know what I mean? First world problems, whatever. So then I remember we did the clinic, and it was literally, there was like 7,000 people there. A bunch of guitar players. It was great. Had a great time, had a glorious meal, all that kind of stuff. But that being said, I was still a little weirded out, and I wanted to make my merry way out of there. So the next morning they said, be in the lobby at 5:30 to catch a ride to the airport. So at 5:15, I'm downstairs in the lobby, ready to go. Ken Oda comes down, is like, "You ready to go?" I'm like, "Absolutely, Ken, I am ready to go." So we get in the vehicle and we start driving out. Even at that hour of the morning, there's still just like a feeling of weirdness in the air, cars and people on street corners just kind of looking like this. I'm like, oh man, I feel bad, Jakarta. I really feel bad, but I need to get out of here. And so as we're driving out of town, we're getting a little bit more towards the outskirts, and the morning fog starts lifting. I'm starting to breathe a little bit easier. I mean, getting in this palpable feeling of relaxation of just soon I'll be on my airplane headed to my next destination. I just want to go. Can you get the idea of what I'm saying? I just want to roll. So as we're going to the airport, all of a sudden Ken Oda starts going and says some kind of expletive in his native tongue. And I go, "Ken, what's wrong?" Well, it turns out he forgot his passport and his wallet back at the hotel in downtown Jakarta. So now my feeling of, oh, we're almost out of here turns into, oh, we have to turn around and go back to the hotel. So we get back. Now it's rush hour in Jakarta. The cars again, people. We miss our flight. So now we're in Jakarta airport for hours on end waiting to catch our flight. I remember that distinctly as being very, very special. Another thing on that particular tour, now this is when I had really, really long hair. This is 2002, right? It's a year later. 2002, September of 2002. I had really, really long hair, and we go into this particular hotel. Now we're in Kuala Lumpur, right? We're staying at this hotel, nice hotel. But again, it's an oil-rich country. There's a lot of people in traditional, Arabic garb, so on and so forth. I got no problem with any of that. I'm just hoping they don't have a problem with me. You know what I'm saying? That's all I'm saying. So we're in there, and we're looking around. We do our thing. Everything's cool. All good. And all of a sudden, I'm sitting on the couch in the hotel, waiting to leave to go to our next destination. And this gentleman and his son are looking at me. And I'm like, what? And they're kind of coming up, and all of a sudden they come up and I'm like, oh my God, I'm being a wussy, I'm being, whatever. So they come up to me and they say, excuse me. I said, yes. Are you the Undertaker? I'm thinking, is this like a code name? What am I? Is this like a liaison? Is there like a thing happening? And I'm like, Undertaker? What are you talking about? Are you the Undertaker? I go, no, I'm not the Undertaker. I'm a guitar player. I just got done playing this thing upstairs. Now, I don't follow wrestling, okay? I have no idea who the Undertaker is versus Shirley Cha-Cha Muldowney, the drag racer. I don't know the difference, right? She could be the Undertaker for all I know. So I don't know what the hell they're talking about. So they kind of leave, and it's kind of awkward and weird. So now I'm getting in the car on the way to the airport, and they've got a nice, Mercedes little limo for us to take to the airport. So it looks like I might be someone important. So me and Ken Oda are waiting to get in the car, and now this guy's back with his son, with the camera, with another person who can speak English a little bit better. And they go, they would like to take a picture with you. They're fans of yours. I go, what? They're fans of The Undertaker. I go, I am not The Undertaker. And they're like, they want to take picture, Undertaker. I'm like, all right, whatever. So next thing you know, I'm flanked and all. I'm taking pictures of everybody. The Undertaker. Hey, it's a free-for-all. So there we are in Kuala Lumpur. I'm The Undertaker, living the dream. And then we get to our next destination is Bangkok. And I tell the story, and the wife of the distributor is a huge wrestling fan. And she also is like, you're a total ringer for The Undertaker. Now, I don't know if you've seen my physique, but even when I was 60 pounds heavier, by no means am I someone who's going to engage in primal contact or primal combat in any way, shape, or form. But that was my experience. Some of my experiences in Asia. Was that entertaining? Those are some stories.